My name's Steve Guggenheimer. Most people call me Googs because there's too many Steves at Microsoft and Guggenheimer's too hard to pronounce. So if you hear anybody call me Googs during our demos today, that's where that comes from. My email is stevengu, S-T-E-V-E-N-G-U, @Microsoft.com. If you end up with any questions after this session. This session is about an hour and 15 minutes long. It's on advancing your business with IT solutions. This is the bridge between Bob Muglia's keynote last night, where he spent about 10 minutes on this, and the hundreds of tracks we're running throughout the event in the next 5 days. One of the things we've done over the last year is take a lot of input from our colleagues and our customers and our partners who've said, hey, look, you guys do a great job at the feature function level. You guys can talk about features and products. You do that really well. Sometimes we want to talk about sort of our business challenges and sort of how all these things aggregate. And so pull it up a level and let's talk about how you address some of our broader business challenges. That's what this session's meant for. One other thing before we get going here, we've got about 40 minutes of demos. We'll do that in the second half of this talk. We're going to show a lot of the CTPs, a lot of the early code. Bob talked last night about the 4 promises. And again, the way we think about these is we get feedback from our customers about aggregating up particular areas they focus on. Complexity is something we all deal with, so help us manage complexity. This particular area is around help me as an IT or development professional be a great partner for the business. We don't always want to be the guys that they look to save money. Oftentimes, people look at IT and say, hey, how do we cut 10% of the IT budget and just keep going? And a lot of the folks we talk to say, look, we want to be strategic partners for the business. We don't want to be called into the room after they've made an acquisition and told to go, make that new company integrate with ours. We want to be called into the room before the acquisition to help decide whether it's a good acquisition or not, to be part of the process, right? And so helping business or helping IT be a partner for business is the area we focus on with our application platform. In general, businesses differentiate themselves in a variety of ways. It could be through how they deal with partners, and maybe it's supply chain and their supply chain. It could be how they do innovation, and maybe it's how they innovate their products. Maybe it's customer service and customer relationship management. The company prides itself on how they do customer relationship management. Each of these is a unique way of differentiating a business, and all of them require applications to support that differentiation. In general, it's the application side of the house that really helps advance the business part or partnering with business, because that's what business is often looking for. Keeping the business running, core infrastructure, right? Getting people on board, getting them access to a printer, getting them email, that's core infrastructure. It's an important and necessary part of being a partner for the business, but in terms of actually moving the business forward, it's the applications that generally link to the business in terms of how the business differentiates itself and how the business moves forward. So this is about applications platform, right, and how we provide capabilities for application development, management, work for applications in general, and how we support your ability in that area. Now, let's talk a little bit about the applications environment. The applications environment continues to become more complex over time, right? There's lots of discussions of form factor explosion. You saw a whole bunch of sessions already, I'm sure, on what's going on with hardware, on the server side, on the client side. Land on any airplane, watch how fast the number of cell phones, BlackBerries go on. Right? 5 years ago, no such animal. Now, a whole plethora of devices. And so that's just one example of device proliferation. There are lots of other hardware changes going on that affect the way we want to build and manage applications. That's just one piece, though. Global software development, right? We can buy offshore development, for less money than we can buy locally. Well, that sounds good, and so people say, hey, if you can buy twice the development time overseas, you should be twice as efficient if you go and do that. Well, that sounds good, but when you have to actually manage a project, right, over the ocean, over 2 teams, over multiple time zone, you don't get that same efficiency. So how do we deal with offshore or multiple location development? How do we handle that both opportunity, yet the complexity that goes with that? We still have to deal with legacy systems. As much as the business says, okay, I'll give you money to go build this new application, if you go turn off the old application, it's never as fast to turn off the old application as you want, and often you just can't turn it off, or you need that particular system. Or it turns out that there's 200 other applications hanging off of that thing that you didn't know about until you went and turned it off and everybody screamed. So making sure we have that connection back. Service orientation or service-oriented architecture. It gives us a lot of capabilities and opportunity to build on top of, to use services to build out our applications in our portfolio. But it's a new level of coding, a new level of work we need to do. So there's lots of things that affect the IT department. People talk about variety, I've brought up a few. But when it comes to the application platform, these are all things that affect our ability to build, develop, deploy, manage, run applications. On the flip side of that, the demand for applications continues to go up. And there is no longer what I think of as a canonical or a single app for the business. We have lots of apps, right? If you take our business, I'll start with ours. We've got lots of internal apps. We have a head tracks app. We have an expense reporting app. We have a time and something for vacation app. It's called TAR. I figure if we take too much vacation, they're going to create the Feather app, and then you'll have TAR and Feather. I don't know why they named it that, but we have lots of internal applications. That's one variety, right? Then we have all the applications we use when interfacing with you and with our partners. We have our customer relationship management software. We have our partner relationship management software. One we purchased and modified, one we built ourselves. We have our product support services software, right? We have our ERP software, big applications, right? And then, of course, off of each of those big applications, we do have hundreds of things hanging off the sides of those, right? You take your CRM system in an organization the size of Microsoft with 50,000 people, I guarantee you the folks in France have built some little app off the side of that thing that when you upgrade, you've broken, and you didn't even know you broke it until they come back screaming. So there's those kind of applications. Then, of course, we have all our web apps. We've got Microsoft.com and MSDN and TechNet. You guys interface with some of those. Our Xbox site. And then we have our services that we're working on, so MSN and things it provides. So there is no single application for Microsoft, all right? And there's no single application for most companies in general. What we need is a platform, an application platform, that allows us to have capabilities to support the variety of applications we need, that we deal with, and some of the complexities we have in terms of the changing nature of application development overall and the applications we want for our business. So we've got an increasing load coming from the business. They want more and more things. We've got a variety of application types. We have a lot of changes going on in the industry, and we need to do all of this typically on a fixed budget or not a very highly increasing budget. And so from Microsoft's standpoint in terms of addressing that pain or dealing with that business area, that's our challenge, is to provide capabilities that allow you to partner better with the business with that, in that environment. And the business and IT typically look at this in two ways. When I wear my sales and marketing business hat, it's very easy for me to change programs. I can create a new sales program in a couple hours, no problem. Write it all up, have it ready to go. Right? I can do a new marketing offer. I can come up with some program that I want the field to go run, right? Or some customer offer. Maybe it's only for Japan. The system side of that can be quite complex, but I don't worry about that because I've got my marketing and sales hat on, and I can do that pretty easily, right? And so on the business side, there's lots of ways they think about driving the business forward that are not always what I'll call IT friendly or even connected with IT reality. But that happens on a pretty regular basis. On the IT side, we often think about, okay, IT governance. How do I keep those guys in France from going off platform and storing PII information in some system they're building that they use their marketing dollars to go create with a vendor? I worry about things like that because that data isn't supposed to be there, right? How do I get the maximum use of IT? How do I work with the guys in India? What do I send over to India and what do I keep here, right? What do I outsource to a partner? What do I build myself, right? How do I make the best use of my resources? How do I deliver on time? How do I deal with the fact that the business has given me a really fuzzy specification and they want a rough order of magnitude? So I'll go off and I'll do a very rough order of magnitude. The business won't like it, so then they'll change the whole specification around. And then I'll go spend another 2 weeks doing a new rough order of magnitude. And of course now they don't like the feature set, and so I'll get into an endless loop. So how do I go about having a better dialogue with the business on that? And then we have to have high quality solutions. If I build the next expense report app and it doesn't work, right, or the UI is not great, or it's not available offline or some other thing, right, then the people don't use it. So I've got to have stuff that's working. So one of the things we're working on at Microsoft is trying to build that connection, right? Trying to build the capabilities, right, across all of the products we build and the individual capabilities to allow that partnership, right? We want to enable a culture where the business feels like IT is responsive because people can talk the same language and work together, that IT can give good rough order of magnitudes based on having better information, really having BI for the development environment itself, whether the apps are again, purchased and modified or built internally. Being able to increase capacity by having more flexibility in the environment, and then decreasing the risk of failure. And actually creating, again, that dialogue between the two teams. Whether we use business process as a language to work between the business owners and the IT departments, whether we use tools, whether we enable the business to be more self-sufficient by giving them the ability to maybe build their own reports out of SQL Server reporting services. We're trying to work on capabilities that allow a better connection between the applications that the business wants, or the things they want to do, not necessarily the applications themselves, and the applications we build or buy or modify. Oftentimes, the business will come in and say, hey, I want you to go buy that app. And that might not be the best thing to do. We really want to get the business to do a better job of specifying what it is, what's the functionality they want, in a language where we can communicate well. And then typically the IT and development teams have a much better idea of the best way to go and do that. But we got to have that language. We don't want some business person going off and purchasing something or promising something because they thought it was a good idea without having that good partnership so that they work with us. And so that's the bridge. Now, we've worked on this internally for some fun stuff. So one of the things we're working on is just building our own products. How do we build a better bridge between the people on the front line, the business, and the people building the products? So I don't think we have a CTP for this at the show here, but I'll just show you some very early software, hardware combination we're working on for our internal development teams, connecting development and the customers together, and the customers, in this case, the business users. And we'll see if you guys agree whether you want a copy of this or not for your teams.
Did you know that 1% of bugs cause an incredible 50% of all operating and system errors? Well, thanks to our Windows XP error reporting dialog box, we do. As a result, we have reduced system errors in our consumer products by over 80%. The success of this feature has encouraged us to extend and enhance it for you, the professionals. We know that your job depends on stable systems, and as our research has shown, the pain of system failure is real. We believe that if our customers are experiencing pain, Microsoft employees should share that pain with them. This is where We Share Your Pain, or WeSIP, comes in.
It's really fundamentally about making us as programmers, as developers, the techie side of things, if you like, making us more accountable to the people that are using our products. An error box comes up like this one, for example. What the WeSIP system does is it actually analyses the stack sent back by that error dialog box. It uses that to identify the person, the actual programmer that wrote the piece of code that's caused the problem. We can now see that it's Mike Pulteney in the Active Directories team. We can now decide on what way we want to express the frustration he's caused us. So we can choose one of the options here. I'm going to choose the jab. I'll just turn up the volume here because we can hear him as well. It's all part of the experience. And here we go. Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's still suffering from that right now.
Let's take a look at the technology behind this great breakthrough.
The first feature I'm going to talk to you about is called the Micro Stun. This is connected to a cranked up TENS machine. The electricity will generate through these arm sleeves. Micro impacts, okay. 4 stages. The back of the chair releases back and thrusts forward into the person sitting into the chair. Yeah, very good. Micro jab. 2 needles are released from the bottom of the chair into the fleshy part of the buttocks. Unorthodox in some ways, but it's very effective. It's more people related.
Microsoft has got the best programmers, we hope, in the world. And this program will help them to share, understand the users in a very direct way.
We want to experience what the user goes through.
I'm really keen to get in touch with the customers.
The more commitment that we can show and the better we can get by doing this, then I think that's good news for everybody.
The future also looks exciting. We are developing WeSIP ejection, a staff motivation feature that pinpoints programmers with poor bug ingress records. Amazingly, while making this film, we witnessed the first ever WeSIP ejection at Microsoft UK office.
Microsoft, connecting with the IT community for a pain-free future.
All right, so I'm not sure we're ready to release that yet, but we'll have some of the chairs for testing out in the lobby, and maybe we can play with that a little more. We do really identify with sort of the pain felt when the things don't come together. I'm dealing with it more on the application side, but I think my infrastructure colleagues would go with that as well. So in terms of the app platform overall and sort of the different capabilities, there's 3 areas that we sort of focus on across all the capabilities. One is connected and adaptable systems. We want to make sure that our products work great together, which we do on a regular basis through common engineering criteria, through a lot of the work you'll see in the demo scenario we do later on, between the development capability, data capability, user experience, business process, BI, etc. But we also work on dealing with heterogeneous environments, and I'll come back to that a little bit later. Really making these things work together. Make sure the system's adaptable, right? A lot of customers we've worked with, one of the reasons they're interested in some of the products we build, I'll take Visual Studio and SQL, is because of the speed of time or the capability to migrate or make changes very quickly, right? Mediterranean Shipping Company is a very large ocean shipper. They use those big ships with all the containers. They have about 200 of those ships. They go to about 200 ports around the world. They carry about 7 million of those containers every year. Right? Across 7 million containers and 200 ships and 200 ports, they do about 15 billion transactions a year. Right? So if you want to know where your cashews are at any point in the ocean, at any time of the day, they can tell you. The trick for those guys, though, is when rules change, they want to be able to adapt their application. So when Homeland Security in the U.S. says, hey, we need now 24-hour notice before the ship is left or container is left when it's coming to the U.S., they need to be able to adapt the program to do that. And so the combination of Visual Studio and SQL working well together allow them to make those kind of changes quickly and have that flexibility. And that's the kind of flexibility you want in your app platform, the ability to adapt to business changes on a regular basis. Cohesive technologies that span the IT lifecycle, right? It's not just the development or the modification of an application, it's the lifecycle of that application. How do I deploy it? How do I manage it? How do I make sure it's secure? The cost of the app is not often the development or the purchase of the software itself. It's the ongoing management of it. So we need to make sure that development and the creation and management of apps is connected to the whole IT lifecycle. Aligning IT with a business, part of this is about having a good discussion. How do I get my VROM discussion and my business needs discussion better mapped together? On our side, we want to make sure we provide more insight into the development process. We want to take the different roles in the development environment and better connect them together. So we can take the architect and the tester and the developer and the database professional and allow them to work in a connected way with one change management system, with one database, one shared source system or source code system, and allow them to have better insight so they can provide better feedback to the business. And lastly, on better business choice and value. We want to make sure the products we build are in themselves a great value, but also there's an ecosystem, right? All of you can support them, that we've got the courseware you need, that there's ISVs out there if you want to purchase an application, that there's VARs and SIs out there if you want to do integration or you want to do customization of an application. So we want to make sure there's a great ecosystem on top of the platform for applications specifically. So across all the things we do, we want to make sure all our things are connected and adaptable, that we can align the IT with the business, and we provide better business choice and value. Now, the focus area are the capabilities, right? If you think about it, there's a set of core infrastructure capabilities, right? Get somebody online, security, management, email, that's core infrastructure. That helps people come to work, a new person come to work, they can get online and they can go to work every day. That's not the application side though, and it's the applications that are the connection with the business. Business wants you to make sure everything's up and running, but in terms of helping move the business forward, it's the apps that are the differentiation. And for that area, it's a different set of capabilities. It's the data management capability, right? The amount of data, the places that data is stored, the number of connections we're making with data with partners continues to grow. So we need more efficient, effective ways to manage that data. The SO and business process layer, the ability to use services to connect things together, and then use business process as the language to bridge between the business users themselves and the development teams. BI, more and more need for BI, just looking at insight. More data, more insight. User experience, the last mile. Too often do we build applications that might have great features and functionality, but don't have a good user experience. And as a result, people don't use the apps, and we don't get the return on investment we intended, or it takes us longer to get the usage. And then lastly, development to connect them all together. We need the ability to connect across data, business process, BI, and user experience with one development environment. And of course, all of this is good for our side, but we also need the interoperability. On the interoperability side, there's three things that we focus on. The first is standards. Right? Microsoft has been working on XML, right, in the standards body since 99, 2000 with the original .NET work we did. Right? We participate in literally hundreds of standards efforts, whether to go back to IETF or the work we do with W3C, the WS Star Initiative, WS Management. There are a number of standards we support. And for long-term interoperability, standards is the best way to go. It allows for interconnection. Now, unfortunately, not everything that's built over the last 20 years is standards-based. There aren't standards for everything. So the second part of what we do is adapters. We provide a number of adapters with our BizTalk product. There's about 13 of them going to 17. We provide a framework for building additional adapters, and we have partners who build adapters on top of that. So there's lots of adapters that you can use for connecting in a heterogeneous environment. And last but not least, we have partners. We'll never be an expert at all the different types of back-end systems. But through standards and adapters, we can help make the connection, and then there will be partners who are best of breed on those systems. And they'll do a variety of work for us. For example, there's an announcement here from one of our partners who's taken the Visual Studio Team System family and created a connection to Eclipse. So if you're working in VSTS and you need a connection to the Eclipse environment, they've built a connection for that. So that's an example of a partner adding value, bringing the two worlds together. So we do a lot of work for interoperability. It's done across three core areas: standards, adapters, and partners. We want to make sure we bring that forward. Right? We will make sure our stuff works great together, or at least as good as we can. But in addition, we do work to make sure that it integrates, because you won't always use all the pieces of the stack. We know that. That's the reality. We want to make sure that whatever pieces you use, they work great together, but they also fit well within your existing system. An app platform is whatever you use to build, deploy, manage, and run applications. And that's going to vary with every one of you in every company out there. And we recognize that, and we want to support whatever environment you have. Now, let's go through each of the capabilities, and then what we'll do is we'll come back and demo all the pieces to this in an integrated scenario. On the development side, we've really focused moving from developer and developer tools to development and SDLC, development lifecycle. For a long time, we've done a great job on languages. We've done languages for a long time. With this release back in November, we did Visual Studio Team System. And the real focus there was starting to have role-based capabilities. Architect role, tester role, as well as the developer role. And allowing them have each of the capabilities that they find most useful in the functionality, but then woven together or connected together through Team Foundation System. And Team Foundation System allows the team to work together. And that way, whether it's change management or feature requests, we can have one repository for all the information, and then ultimately for all the code itself. Right? We can store all the code, whether it's the stuff the architect's doing, whether it's the stuff the tester's doing, or the developer. And we can actually align it with the tasks, so we know how things that are getting checked in align back to the tasks we're doing. So we're doing a better job of enabling team development. And then third is organization. We can take that project that we're working on, that overall development project, and we can use something like Microsoft Project, for example, to allow the PMO or the project management office to have a full project view. And so when I want to be able to do a better job of a VROM or give status on a project, I can use Project as a piece of software to have a full connected view of that. So whether I use Excel to look at the information, right, the tools in TFS or Project, I can connect through. On the other side, we can connect in with the management tools. So we can make sure we're developing with management in mind and how it's going to operate in the data center, or security in mind. So we're supporting the other part of the IT lifecycle, which is the deployment of that app and the management of that app. So we're really trying to scale from individual developers to development both at the group level and at the organization level. Right? So Visual Studio Team System shipped in November. We're seeing good response to that, and that's been ongoing. At the show here today, and what we'll show later, is we've announced the CTP, or made available the CTP for the Visual Studio Team System, in this case, database professional role. So now we've got the architect role, tester role, developer role, and now we're adding the database professional role. So now the database professional can participate in the overall work stream, can use the same back-end database, and take advantage of some of the capabilities. So that's that role. We'll talk a little bit later about user experience and designer. That's another role we're pulling into the family. It's not completely integrated with TFS yet, but just having that connection again between developer and designer is another role. So over time, you'll see more roles work into this lifecycle model. Lastly, at the show, actually it's next week, we're going to announce Commerce Server 2007. It's not an integrated part of Visual Studio Team System, but traditionally it's mostly developers that are using that suite, right, for connection with B2B type apps or B2C type apps on the web. And with this release, we've done a great job of integration with SharePoint. We've really taken feedback for the last 5 years on what people wanted and sort of integrated that in, which has been one of the core areas, and then performance overall. So that's the development capability. Next to the development capability is the database capability. On the data side, we're moving from data and a database to a data platform. Today, there's more data stored outside of the data center than inside of the data center. We're dealing with data in the data center, we're dealing with it under people's desks, we're dealing with it on mobile devices, on all kinds of places. And making it available or making access to that data and integration of that data easier, and such that we can manage it and do more with it, is the key to business insight, which we're going to get to later on. So this is an area where if you look at SQL 2005, we really focused on three things. We focused on scaling up for the enterprise, right? All the things necessary for high availability, the work necessary for reliability, for scalability, performance. That was the focus, and we've gotten great feedback on that. The second area was developer productivity. How can we integrating the CLR into SQL 2005, connection with Visual Studio, that Mediterranean shipping company example where we can better connect the development environment to the database so we can do database development more easily. Now with this release of this database professional tool for the Visual Studio Team System, we have yet another connection. So really trying to connect the database into the development environment. Because data is a key part of almost every application today, right? Many are data-centric or need data. So making that bridge is something we've been working on. And then third is integration into the BI stack. So we'll come back and talk about Office and the other pieces, but really enabling people to have visibility to that data so we can use it for something. It's not enough to just store it. We need to glean information out of it to help us drive the business forward. On that end, we've made a bunch of announcements, or at least several announcements at the show and before. After we released SQL 2005, we've already done the first service pack. That was to get the database mirroring out there, which is part of our high availability offer. In line with that, at this show, we've announced 8 partners to go along with the always-on capability. What we've done is we've taken all the features for high availability, things like database mirroring, snapshot technology, failover technology, and we've grouped those in an always-on bucket, so we know what the features are for high availability. We've then gone out and worked with our hardware partners to make sure that the hardware they're building for storage and backup and other systems works well with those features so that we know when we have an always-on hardware along with the software, it'll work great in a high availability environment. And as data becomes more important, we need that backup. As we're using more data, as data's driving the business, we need to make sure we always have access to the data, so always-on becomes more important. The last piece is the notion that there's more data in more places. So one of the things we've been working on is a lightweight, embedded, compact version of SQL Server called SQL Server Everywhere Edition. And again, here at the show, we're releasing the first CTP at the show. And I'll show you in the demo. We'll take a little look at this. So again, extending from a database to a data platform, scaling up for always on, scaling out to smaller, more embedded offerings with SQL Everywhere, and then again, just the ongoing momentum with SQL itself. Lot of great feedback on this. There's a lot of customer case studies if you want to find them out there already on SQL 2005. So if you need information on this, we can help you get it. What I want to do is, it's nice for us to talk about, I want to give a customer example at least, besides the Mediterranean Shipping Company, show you how NASDAQ is taking advantage of the capability.
NASDAQ is the largest U.S. electronic stock market. With approximately 3,300 companies, it lists more companies and, on average, trades more shares per day than any other U.S. market. As part of its ongoing commitment to providing the most technically advanced infrastructure and the greatest value for traders, NASDAQ is replacing tandem mainframes with PC servers. NASDAQ's internal development team created its new Market Data Dissemination System, or MDDS, using Microsoft SQL Server 2005 running on Windows Server 2003 Enterprise Edition. Every trade that is processed in the NASDAQ marketplace goes through the MDDS system, with SQL Server 2005 handling some 5,000 transactions per second and about 100,000 queries a day.
When we looked at SQL Server 2005, we were very excited because we felt that it met our needs of capacity, growth, reliability, and it was a very cost-effective solution. In addition, the tools that come with the product, such as database mirroring, allows us to meet our reliability objectives of 4 nines.
The move to Microsoft SQL Server 2005 is providing NASDAQ with a number of benefits, including lower total cost of ownership and enterprise availability and performance.
We have the ability with the SQL Server 2005 to partition our databases and actually run higher transaction rates than we are today. Microsoft Windows Server 2003 has allowed us to meet our availability numbers of 99.98. We've achieved 99.99. This is very comparable to proprietary mainframe platforms that we've run in the past. Definitely, we're going to operate more efficiently and also be able to drive more transaction rates, which means more business for us.
The Microsoft Application Platform also provides NASDAQ with greater agility to meet customer needs, such as the ability to deliver real-time information to their users.
The biggest surprise that our business realized was the ability to do ad hoc queries to look at additional data that in the past would have taken days or even weeks possibly to get at. one of our sales teams was now able to get up-to-the-minute data before they went and seen customers. And this was something they couldn't do in the past, and we were able to do this because of SQL Server 2005.
NASDAQ needed a solution that was enterprise ready and found it with SQL Server 2005.
Microsoft SQL Server 2005 has definitely met and in most cases exceeded our expectations.
Microsoft has been a long-term strategic partner for NASDAQ, and we look forward to continuing that relationship in the future.
Okay, so working up from the data capability, now SOA and business process. SOA, service-oriented architecture, service orientation is something we've been working on for a long time. We've been doing XML and services since 99, 2000, with our .NET platform, with many of our different servers. So that's part of an ongoing effort. The second piece is business process. And this is an area where we've been working again for quite a while on business process management. Across our BizTalk product line and our SharePoint product line, we're working to enable person-to-person workflow, as well as people-to-machine workflow or machine-to-machine workflow. And I think of it really as simple workflow to complex workflow. So if it's something as simple as, hey, when this document goes around, make sure it has all 3 signatures, that's simple. When it's a help desk type app where you might have to route hardware to different vendors or call in different people, and you have a mixture between machine and human, you need much more of an orchestration process as well as a workflow process. So this is an area we've been working on. Our BizTalk 2006 release, we just hit release to market of that not too long ago. And then last week we announced that we're going to do a BizTalk R2 version. We've gotten good feedback on the product overall. 2 areas to focus on. One is EDI. We have great EDI support today through partners, but we're going to provide native support now for both EDI as well as AS2 in the box. In addition, we're working on RFID, and we're going to integrate the RFID capabilities we announced at TechEd last year into BizTalk. So now we have the RFID capability, as well as adding some more adapters and the framework for doing adapters around the .NET 3.0 or the WinFX framework. So we're building that capability in as well. So again, extending the BizTalk product line, making a great tool for both integration and orchestration, as well as business process management. Next capability is BI. On the BI side, no news at the show really. We did the ProClarity acquisition a while ago, but there's a lot of work when you start with what Office is doing. So you look at Office and Business Scorecard Manager down to SharePoint, from SharePoint into the SQL Server reporting services, and then into the database overall. It's a really good example where you need capabilities across different Microsoft products to enable the overall BI capability or features. And so we really do work across the business to enable business insight. And we'll come back and show this one in a couple minutes. And then on the top of the stack, last but not least, is user experience, the last mile. Again, too often our application's built with UI as the last thing being done, and as a result, people don't use the app. And so there's a lot of work going on to enable great user experience. And this comes in many forms. One is the connection between designer and developer. We showed some of the expression tool set last night. We'll show some more of that later on. That allows us to bridge between designers and developers, working on the same code, but in a design surface and a development surface at the same time. So people can use the design surface or the development surface they're most comfortable with. With Windows Vista or .NET 3.0, we're still working on Windows Presentation Foundation to make sure that people can build rich apps on top of Windows as we go forward. We did rename WinFX to .NET 3.0. No change. There's still Windows Presentation Foundation, Communication Foundation, Workflow, InfoCard. We just redid the name because we got a lot of feedback from developers that WinFX as a top-level brand and .NET as a top-level brand, you can't have 2. You got to choose one. There's a lot of awareness for .NET. So no change to any code, no change to any functionality, just a rebrand on the naming. For Office, a lot of people like to use Office as a front end for applications. We've done some of this with our business applications. At the show today, we announced Office Business Application Services. We're going to create a set of services through SharePoint that will allow you to take your line of business application and expose it in Office or interconnect with Office. So the work we've done with SAP, where you can now front-end SAP with Office, we're going to allow other ISVs to do that. Whether it's something you build yourself and you want to surface your line of business app or your vertical app through Office or through other ISVs that you might be working with. And we'll create a tool set for that. We've also created the BizTalk Adapter Pack, so you can have the adapters work directly with Office and the Office Business Application Services for SharePoint or SQL, so you don't have to, if you're not using all the BizTalk functionality, you can just use the adapters. So again, trying to build that bridge whether you want to use Office as a front end or not. And then smart client, thin client work with Ajax, ASP.NET, and Atlas, a lot of work going on there. So whether you're building a web UI, Whether you're building a Vista UI, whether you want to use Office as the UI, or you want to better connect your designer and your developer, we're working on enabling better user experience in apps. In the long term, that's going to be a differentiator, not just for what you do internally, but for the websites and the web applications you build to connect with your customers or your suppliers. So, we've gone through all the capabilities. What we wanted to do now is bring those capabilities to life in a development scenario. So, the way we've basically done this is we've gone through, we're going to use a scenario where we have AdventureWorks as sporting goods manufacturing as our company. We're going to go acquire Northwinds. Right? Northwinds is a smaller firm. They're pretty conservative on IT. They don't spend a lot, so they're using a lot of older systems. They're not sort of the most advanced. And of course at AdventureWorks, we're the far end of the spectrum. They all came to TechEd. They have every CTP I just talked about, and they're actually coding with it already, amazingly enough. So they're sort of at the bleeding or leading edge of technology. And we just want to go through connecting from the core infrastructure part, all the way from the database and the development capability up through BI and out through user experience, so we can take a scenario and take these capabilities and weave them together as you might do pieces of this within a business scenario. So here's our checklist. I'm going to be the boss. I'm going to have the folks come out and help us along. We're going to start with the systems architecture, look at the architecture and the data platform. Once we get the data platform set up by the architect, then we're going to move in and we're going to look at the business process. We're going to look at some of the work we need to do on integrating our back-end vendors, our order processing system. Once we've got the architecture set up and the order processing, then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and look at and move the data over from Northwinds. We want to make that data available for the business users and then make it available for the sales folks. And then lastly, once it's all integrated, we want to bring the experience to life for the users and enable an application that shows the new products there. So that's the scenario we're going to go through. It'll pull some of the stuff you saw last night in Bob's keynote, but we'll do it all in more depth. And again, if you want to see the code, you'll have to be a little bit closer. With that, we're going to start with the architect role. I'm going to invite Michael Leeworthy out to join me. Michael's got a nice task list that I've built for him. You can see he's going to start with the resource allocation, but then he gets to build this out for me. Michael, why don't you come on out here?
Thank
you.
Let
me get my water out of your way, and why don't you take over?
No worries. So as Steve was starting to talk about the acquisition of Northwind, I started to think, well, what tasks do we really need to do? And the great thing about that, I started capturing these tasks in Visual Studio 2005 Team Foundation Server. Now the really good thing about this is I can keep my complete team up to date as an architect if I have developers and testers. I can keep my project managers up to date utilising Excel or project tools, or anyone in the organisation utilising SharePoint, such as Steve. I can actually send him reports on the cost of the acquisition, the resources required, and how it actually is all going. The good thing about that is no matter what tool that I'm using, I can actually access that information within Team Foundation Server. So here are some tasks that I've actually created for myself, and I've been looking at how we're going to best utilise the Northwind acquisition and their technology and integrate it into our current AdventureWorks technology. So what I've done is I've actually created an application diagram or a model that looks at AdventureWorks and componentises down AdventureWorks, and I've done the same for Northwind. I've also looked at the way Northwind actually utilise their sales process and their databases, and we've looked at web services as the best way to expose that. And so since we use web services infrastructure in our organisation, it's very, very easy to integrate in. So what you're seeing here is AdventureWorks as a database, as a web services infrastructure, talking out to a web application, which is our customer-facing application, and also a smart client application as well that we can utilise for internal folk and also some of our premier partners. With the new web services infrastructure available on Northwind, for me to integrate this into my current organisation, it is simply drag, drop, and connect. And what's happening behind the scenes is it's creating all those starter kits for me, all the web methods, all the code that my developers actually require. But it doesn't stop there. What I can actually do is test this in my organisation. As an architect, did I wire it properly? Have I got the right settings to integrate this in? But best of all, working with my IT folks, the guys that are actually managing my servers, is anything in this application design, these new web service design, is anything going to affect our hardware? Is anything going to affect that data centre? And is that application going to be working in that data centre on day one?
So we're basically creating a virtual data center, and it's going to allow me to check and make sure all the things I need turned on are off across all the hardware, all the services are turned on, so it sort of saves us some time on the management side.
Absolutely. So we can actually capture all this information, what authentication methods I require, whether I require things like cookies, in-proc SQL Server information, anything that I want to capture around a web service, I can actually, or a web application or a smart client, I can actually do that within the modeling environment. And the same in the data center environment. I can capture database system, operations system, and application level. So what I've done here is I've created a component view of the Northwind system to bring that easily into my application. I can just right-click and actually define the deployment. It will ask me which logical data center diagram I want to use, and I'm actually going to pick my generic data center diagram. And what you're going to see is a view of my data center, or a logical view, the application layer, the database layer, the operating system layer. I actually have an IIS server that's customer facing in a hardened IIS zone. This will be behind ISA firewalls, of course. I have an application server, my smart client component within my intranet, and then a secure database server. You're seeing here the two applications that we saw on the application diagram, my Northwind catalog web service and my Northwind database. Now I can simply drag and drop them onto this database, this logical data center, and actually test to make sure that they're going to work in this current environment. So I'm going to drag this onto my internal server. It's asking me, where do you want to deploy this to? What's it actually pointing to? This is actually going to be pointing out to my secure application website, so customers can actually come in and order information. Secondary to that, I can actually have my database, and I can deploy my database to my data center. And we can do some real-time validation here. So I know that I can't deploy a database to a web server or a smart client. I only can report it to a data center. So we can do some real-time validation, not only that, but a lot of other real-time validation. But the great thing also is I can right-click this and actually validate this. It's going to walk through all those settings that we had within the infrastructure and all the settings that we're having within the application, and actually view if there's any errors, any inconsistencies. And I actually have one. So for this application to work, I actually need to make a setting within the hardware itself, within the IIS server itself, so I can actually go out, talk to IT to see if we can make that setting without affecting any other applications. Or as an architect, on day one, before even code is created, I can actually say, well, let's re-architect that. So I'm going to do that. Simply right-click. I'm actually going to go to that setting, and you'll see down here I can simply turn off the requires impersonations, and now when that application deploys, it will actually deploy with the right setting, and I know that this application is going to work in this data center the way that we've architected it. The next thing I want to do there is I want to capture all this information. The whole idea of our developer lifecycle is to ensure that this information is shared between all my developers and architects and testers, and of course anyone that's involved in the development lifecycle. So I can actually check all this information in, so any person running a running team suite in my organisation can actually access this and have an understanding of why I've actually designed it this way. I can click on my pending changes, and you can see there's a number of changes that we made while we were talking. So I'm just going to hit the check-in button. Now as it's checking in, I've got a policy failure. Now Steve, being the controller in our organisation, wants to ensure that he keeps track of us. He wants to know what we're doing day by day. So via those work items, he's saying that when I check source code in, I need to actually associate it with work items. So when my developers, when my architects create work items and do work, we know that we can track this information now, and most importantly, report on this information in real time. So I can actually go back, associate it with those work items that I created for myself. Those are going to be resolved, so I'm actually removing tasks here, check this information in, and now I'm going to be completely updated via version control. I can actually update that via project management server and Excel, and I also can track that via my business intelligence reporting. Now in our organisation, I actually wear the hat of the data architect as well. As you've just heard, we've just released this great new tool, Visual Studio 2005 Team Edition for Database Professionals. So I've grabbed a copy of this, which I can get at the TLC Centre, and I've ran back and I said, Steve, this is exactly what we need. Because Steve's always been nervous about me working with our database systems. Because effectively, when we want to make changes, we're either doing it in production or we're doing it with databases that don't behave, or testing databases that don't behave like our production database. With Team Edition for Database Professionals, I can really overcome that. What I've done here is, with Visual Studio 2005, with a new client integrated, I can actually create a new project, such as a SQL 2000 project or a 2005 project, depending on the type of database system that I'm working with. So to save a bit of time, I've actually created a 2005 project here, and what I've done is I've synchronized or imported the database schema for my 2005 system. Now the great thing about this is I'm completely offline now, so I'm working in an isolated and protected environment without affecting our production system. Once I've also created my database services, I can then actually go in and create such as a testing system. I need to actually create some changes. We're bringing Northwind in. We need to be able to provide a little bit of changes to our database systems to make sure that when their data comes in, it comes in seamlessly. Now to do this, we actually have to go in and change columns and refactor tables in our database. Now with this tool, I can do this easily, but I want to test this out. So I've gone out and created a test database. And for me to actually now load that test database with my schema, all I have to do is right-click, deploy my selection. You'll see in my output that my deployment succeeded. So I've imported this schema from my production database. I've now exported that schema seamlessly and easily out to my my test database, and now I can get to work. On a little testing. Next thing I want to do is, because I'm actually going to go in and change a few tables, I'm going to actually change some of that core schema. I want to ensure that the integrity after I make those changes is all right. So I want to create things such as data generation plans. So a data generation plan is a testing generation plan. It's going to provide me the ability to create repeatable testing data for my test database. So I can simply add this.
This also keeps you out of the real data. So when we're dealing with things like customer information, credit cards, he can generate a real test set that we can use without getting anywhere near the real data, which is the last thing I want him doing with, and have it be good valid data that we can work against.
And that's true. So this is the great thing. I'm creating a test data that behaves and feels like my production server, my production database, without having access to maybe private information or critical information. So I'm just going to change the view here so that you get a better view. Great. So what you're seeing here is all my tables in my schema. And basically, with this, I can now create test data that behaves like my production server. So for example, I know that in my real database, for orders have customers. Customers do orders. And I know that most customers actually have an average of 10 orders. Now in the current tool, I can set this up manually, but when we release this to production later this year, you'll find that this will actually happen automatically for you. I can also go down and actually view the data that's going to be generated via the test generation generators. So down here, what I can do is I can control the way that test data is generated. For example, if I look at things such as customers, I can look at postal codes and actually look at the generator that's actually generating that data for me and actually say I want to use a regular expression to generate that. If I look at my regular expression, I can quickly change that and say, well, a postcode is going to be 0 to 9 and it's going to be 5 numbers. If I go and look at my customer information over here, you can see that my postal code information is now 0 to 9 and 5 numbers. So it gives me the ability to really control these generators. They're very, very extensible, very customizable. So you can actually have test data, scrub test data and use that. Or you can point this out to something like a map point web service and pull in real addresses to actually test in your database. So I've created this test generation plan now. I can just kick it off, choose my test database that I created before. I'm going to clear this information so I know that I'm starting in a pristine state. And this data is repeatable, so no matter when I do these tests from now on, I'm going to be testing against the same generated data. And as that's generating down, you should see the status change as it's actually building the data for me based on the relationships within these tables. So once I've created the data generation, or once I've loaded my test database with test data, I want to actually go and create a test for that to ensure that both that generated data is correct and also any information that I may change later on is not going to decrease the integrity of my database. With Visual Studio Team Edition for database professionals, I can now create simple unit tests from stored procedures. So I'm actually going to change something to do with price and units. So I've created a stored procedure around 10 most expensive products. To create a test from that, it's simply right-click, create unit tests. And this integrates in with the Visual Studio Team Suite testing tool, so we're utilising the same testing project and the same engine behind that. And you can see behind this, even though you'll see this in T-SQL, behind it I'm actually utilising VB or C# code. So if your developers are developing in VB or they're developing in C#, they can take these tests and extend these tests. I'm going to run this again, of course, against my test database. And in a moment there, you'll see the automatically generated unit test for my T-SQL. Now, I'm going to have to return some sort of results back to that. So I know that I'm expecting my row count to be returned from this test to be 10. So I'm going to actually set this to 10. Just click into my test view and run this to ensure that this test is going to be correct. Now as this running, you should see what we've done. We've imported the schema, we've created test data that behaves like our production data. We've now got a unit test that will test for that. So in this unit test will pass in a moment. I can now actually go and make any changes to the data, the schema of the database, and actually have a test to ensure that those are not going to destroy or limit the integrity. So let's go and do that. Let's go and make a hardcore change to my database. Now again, we're still working in an isolated and protected mode. We're still working in our test environment. So I'm actually going to go to my orders here, my customers here. Go to my columns. Actually, we're going to change orders, weren't we? So let's go to orders. I'm actually going to change my customer ID. Oh, hit rename. And go to customer number. Now you'll see here that once I've clicked this, I'll be able to preview those changes. I'll be able to see what changes are going to be made to that schema. So here's the information that's going to be happening within the table. This gives me the good predictability of exactly what's going to change. I can change information within the schema objects and view that information. I can also change information in the scripts, any data generation plans, and also any unit tests that I've created. So we're now just going to go and apply that. And this should take a moment to apply. And once we've applied that change, I can then easily go back, rerun that unit test, or actually do any other changes that I want to make to this database.
Given time, I think we won't redo the test. I trust you.
No worries. So once we've gone through this, and that now has completely been changed, I can then look at exactly what has changed between my project and my test database. So I'm actually just doing a schema compare from the project, from the refactoring of the project that we just did to my test database to look at exactly what has changed. And the great thing about this is I can automatically write those changes straight out. Or what I can do is I can actually export this out as T-SQL and run this as a script a little later on. So you can see here, if I filter this down for different objects, you can see these are all the changes that are going to happen in the database. And here's a script, information of the script that I'm going to run. Now this is a great thing. We've made all those changes we need to know. We've ensured the integrity of our database. We've worked in that isolated and protected mode. And the good thing about this is we need to be able to ensure that these changes can be tracked and version controlled. And the last thing I would like to show you is how now we can actually add this whole solution to source control. So what you're seeing there is I can now track all this information in. I can ensure that I can track changes, I can track my tasks, and I can ensure this information is all version controlled. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so good job on Michael. Working on CTP code without a wire, always a good thing to do, so he did a good job there. So we've set up the data architecture in this case. I'm going to invite Chris Horax out to join us. The next thing we need to do is look at sort of our order fulfillment system, the orchestration of our order fulfillment at AdventureWorks with that of Northwind's Trade, and bring these together. Chris, I'm going to let you take over. We're going to go kind of quickly through this so we can keep ourselves moving.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us away?
Yeah, Steve, so I thought I'd just run through what our integration plan is. Last time we met, we had integrated or built out AdventureWorks' order processing system in BizTalk because you guys had some concerns given your future growth plans about how quickly IT would be able to keep up with the business demands on your acquisition spree. So we moved the order processing process into BizTalk server to manage the coordinated activity between the services that we have on our own systems, the services on the systems that our partners own, and the services that are on systems that we've purchased and customized. And in particular, out of all of those, fulfillment was a particularly tricky issue because AdventureWorks has a number of fulfillment partners, some of which are internal organizations and others are just external third parties. And at the time, you guys were doing a bit of spaghetti integration. You had individual ad hoc integration solutions for each one of those situations. So we brought it all into BizTalk to give you one consistent integration and process platform. So the other thing that did was set us up for the future, which would be right now, where to integrate new business partners, we actually don't need to change the business process. So to give you an idea of what we're going to do to bring in Northwind, the goal is eventually to have Northwind's fulfillment system show up as another trading partner when we're done. So here we have a view inside of business activity monitoring that we'll use to get a view of the activity as it flows through all of our trading partner systems and between them and BizTalk. The way we would actually do that, because we've implemented the process inside of BizTalk Server, is to use BizTalk's trading partner management system. Now, I've already gone through and configured the details for the EDI connection, and I had a business analyst come into trading partner management and fill out kind of the high-level organizational relationships. So they put in information like the way that we'll identify trading partners, perhaps with an organizational identifier and so forth. And I want to go through and just hook them into the orchestration that we just saw there a minute ago. So from within the trading partner management site, I can do that pretty quickly by creating a new agreement and filling out some metadata to describe that partner and the agreement that we want to participate in. It's also important, the BAM site I showed you before, that's an IT-specific view on the BI that we expect to have. So once we actually have the system in production and we're capturing these events from these trading partner interactions, we could also expose them up to our business analysts through like Scorecard or SQL Server reporting services. So actually, let's go ahead and look at that in a little more detail here. So inside of this view, if we wanted to actually see trading partner behavior, we have here a view that actually shows us a little too much information, so it's kind of hard to see what the pipeline behavior is with our trading partner integration. We have information here that's dealing with revenue and so forth, and what we really want to see once we actually hook up Northwind is just in general, what the average SLAs are, so what the cycle times are between our business process and our trading partners. So by stripping away the extra detail, business analysts can quickly slice and dice the metrics that they've been capturing to get a view on that. And hopefully our trading partner management should be up here. It is. And within this site, the idea is that the analysts, or our IT pros who actually deal with the integration, have already gone into BizTalk and configured the low-level connections. So Northwind uses some EDI-specific or EDI messages. They expose those over some EDI-specific protocols. We've configured that. When we're ready to actually hook the systems up and go live, we can go into trading partner management and quickly assemble agreements together. The other nice thing is that this completely abstracts the trading partner relationship out of the business process, because many trading partners might all participate in a single business process. For example, we have many fulfillment partners. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this into BizTalk. And what BizTalk's doing now is it's actually going through and hooking up that EDI connection that had been defined for them, enabling Northwind to be able to participate in that business process that we had inside of Visual Studio, right? And setting it all up so that we can actually send some test messages into the system.
Okay, it's going to go a little slow.
It's going to go a little slow.
Is it going to keep going?
It should keep going.
All right, that's good. It's cranking away. Running VPCs on top of machines in the back with a reasonably high-end set of systems takes a while at times.
There we go.
There we go.
So it's been set in. Now, if we wanted to actually, once we've got that hooked up, we want to push some test messages through the system just to verify again in our development environment that, hey, this integration has happened. We actually do have Northwind provisioned as a new trading partner. You could do this through Visual Studio and create some custom tests using Visual Studio's testing utility. We also have our own custom utility that we've built here against the BizTalk APIs.
So you built the utility yourself. It's not part of the product.
Yeah, right. So our management console has tons of features that you can leverage, but we expose everything through .NET APIs, through WMI APIs, and also through a variety of web services. So right now our custom test utility here is pumping some messages through BizTalk. They're getting routed by the orchestration out to the appropriate trading partner based on information in the messages. So if an order comes in and it contains identifiers for products that are fulfilled by Northwind, BizTalk can automatically route that message to Northwind, transform it on its way out, because Northwind's going to expect messages in EDI compliant formats, but we don't use EDI internally. We're using our own formats that make sense for our business. So we can see that the test messages have been pushed through. If we go in here and again, we'll just verify that Northwind actually is showing up as a new partner. There we can see that our business activity monitoring automatically picks up that new activity. We don't actually have to change any of the instrumentation that's in the system. It shows up just as yet another trading partner.
Excellent. So I could push that up to the BI guys if I wanted to, the business people, if they want to see it. I don't think they'd want to see this detail, but no, you can get it to them.
Yeah, this is an IT-specific view. It comes out of the box with BizTalk, very easy to get up and running quickly so that you can quickly get visibility into your processes. But you would want to create another view using Scorecard Manager or perhaps SQL Server reporting services for the BI for the business folks.
Given time, I assume when you're done, you'd package this up for deployment?
Yeah, you would.
To go?
Well, one of the things we wanted to do actually was to interface to this business process through web services. So BizTalk provides a variety of communication support. So if you wanted to send stuff in through FTP or send it in, as I mentioned, through EDI or as proprietary flat files, you could do that. If you want to expose business processes as services to the rest of your environment, you can certainly do that using our web services publishing wizard. And so with this tool basically allows you to go in and select any particular BizTalk DLL that contains orchestrations and specify which business processes you want to make available through a web services interface, and then it will automatically build the ASP.NET facade in front of your business process. Right, so that's something we're actually going to do after this meeting. The other thing we wanted to do, which you just mentioned, which was to package all this up. Because as you can see, there's a lot of moving parts in business process and integration solutions. We've got various message schemas, we've got transformations, we've got all this trading partner management data, we have business activity monitoring data, we have business rules and so forth. That used to be a really hard problem to solve. It used to be pretty complicated to make sure that when you were going to move from one environment to another that you actually had all those dependencies gathered up and that you were going to be able to move everything in a consistent way, perhaps from dev to QA or QA to production. With BizTalk 2006, we now have there's now a monitoring console that's going to allow us this time around to do this in a very seamless fashion. It turns out that BizTalk will actually organize all the dependent artifacts for a particular integration solution within a nice logical hierarchy here, like you'd expect in a management console. What's really great is that I can actually go in and export this thing directly to an MSI file. So this is just going to package all the dependencies up from these various systems into a single deployable file.
Fine. Then once I've got an MSI file, I can deploy it. I can use SMS if I was deploying it more broadly, and I'm ready to go. Plus, the other thing is we can also store this, again, in Team Foundation server. So we've got all the information there, and everything's ready to go.
Yeah, you check it in, and you've got a snapshot of your integration solution at a point in time, and it's an easily deployable thing across your farm.
Excellent. So I think we're going to go from there. Thank you for the help on that. So good. All right, so piece 2 from Chris. So now we've done the architecture side. We've looked at the virtual data center. We've gone ahead and set up our data architecture that we want to work with. Chris then helped us out with the order fulfillment using BizTalk to do the orchestration. We've got new fulfillment partners we need to be able to work with. The next level now is we sort of got the back end done. We need to start to transition up. We need to integrate our data, and it turns out that the Northwinds guys use a DB2 database, so we got to get the DB2 database the DB2 data over into our database. We then need to test that, make sure it works. We want to turn on high availability since data is becoming a more important part of our business. We want to make sure we don't lose anything and we're always up and running, especially as we're doing more web-based sales and have guys on the road. Then I want to start making that data available to both our business users and our sales force. So now we're going to keep working our way up through the capabilities. I'm going to ask Michael Rahim to come out and give me a hand, and we need to get going here. So I'm going to have Michael just dive right in.
Take over here.
Yeah.
Okay. To start with, I'm going to show you that the Northwind legacy system is on, as you know, is on a legacy system on IBM DB2. So as you see, here's the IBM Control Center on DB2. Here's the Northwind database, and here's the customer table. If you actually look at the data in here, you can see that the data has a lot of, it's a legacy data. It needs to be cleaned up. There's some duplicates and so on. So before we bring this data into AdventureWorks database, we need to clean it up. In order to do that, I'm going to take advantage of something called the SQL Server Integration Services, which allows you to extract the data, transform, and load it into our AdventureWorks database. Within here, there is our data source, as you see, is an OLEDB data source, and it's pointing to IBM DB2, as I mentioned. So if I run this package, which I've already run it, I'm going to show you the actual output of this package. You can see here, you can see the names and the scoring that is on the right side. This means how did that name match and how many duplicates are in there if you want to do the correlation. If I scroll down, for example, you can see Panorad is one of the records in here, and there are multiple duplicate records that point to the same name. Maybe Pan, for example, is a match for this particular record, and he was a customer that was entered accidentally or accidentally multiple times within the system. So this allows you to cleanse the system before we bring it into our AdventureWorks database.
It's important to clean up the data before we bring it in so we start fresh.
Yeah. One of the other things that concerns you is now with the acquisition, we have these kiosks, as you mentioned, that we need to have to make sure that we have highly available databases. So with the SQL Server 2005 always-on technologies, I can take advantage of one of the features in there called database mirroring to make sure that the database is available in case of either an upgrade that we want to perform, if there is an accidental failover, or if there's a system failure such as a natural disaster and so on. Now, traditionally, to set up database mirroring, it has been very complex. It requires having special hardware to go with the geoclusters and so on. This is completely with simple hardware, and just to show you for the first time, you can actually go through a wizard to set up database mirroring. So you don't have to go hire those consultants that we used to hire back in the days. It's just as simple as that. So I'm going to go through this, take advantage of a witness here. Now, on the principal server, I'm going to point it to our AdventureWorks. On the mirror server, I'm going to connect to our mirror. And I'm going to have a witness here. Let's check the mirror here. So here's the mirror. Clicking next. And I'm going to have a witness server. And the advantage of the witness server is to assure consistent transactions between the principal and the mirror server.
So that witness makes sure it's either written in both places or written in no places, but we never end up in a state where it's written in only one place.
So here we go. This is the mirroring setup. And now I start the mirroring. So if we look actually on the Management Studio, you can see here's our principal that is mirrored. And if we go to the mirror site and we look at the database, right now if we refresh it, you can see that now this is acting as the mirror.
All right. So setting up high availability in this case was pretty straightforward. It's come a long way.
Yes. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is what we can do with our traveling salespeople that are on the field. So one of the problems we have right now is that our sales field is traveling on the road, and they want to have the ability to take advantage of the Pocket PC devices we have in order to do sales order entry while they're on the road. Now, they want to be able to enter these orders on the road, but once they get back to the corporate office or to their offices, be able to sync up with the corporate database. In order to do that, we can take advantage of SQL Everywhere, as you know, for occasionally connected systems. So here's a device. This is an emulator. You can imagine this is just having the device in your hand. The traveling salesperson can go and say, I want to do a sales order entry for this particular application. Now, imagine he's at a customer's site and he wants to quickly go there and enter this information right on the site. The SQL Everywhere application, I can go here and select a customer, say he is at Responsible Bike Dealers currently. And within there, the Responsible Bike Dealers really likes the jersey that I'm wearing here. So we're going to create a new order for jerseys.
So this is all working locally, right? I'm not connected in this case?
That's right. This is as if you have the device and you're on the road and you're not connected to the main office. Exactly. So on the product, it's going to show me a list of products where I'm going to select a jersey. I'm going to add that to the order, and that's it with that order entry. So here we go on the jersey. Let's say in this case it picks a table lock. That's good enough. And this is all stored. The SQL Everywhere is running on the device, and once it comes back to the office to synchronize it, Everywhere will talk to the enterprise server. So here we go, add the product, and add this to the order. And we're done with this order entry. Now, imagine the salesperson now comes to the office, and he cradles the Pocket PC, and that causes the synchronization so that that order is now entered and synchronized with the main database. In this case, SQL Everywhere and SQL Server running in the enterprise are synchronized in that order entry. So that's entered in the order entry system in AdventureWorks. Now, to show once the synchronization is done, I'm going to go ahead and query our database to make sure that the order got in there. So here's a stored procedure that shows me the orders. And if I fire that up, there is the cable lock that I just created. Now, the SQL Server, as a data platform, the extensibility model also allows us to do some of the fun things. So just to show you how extensible this data platform is, I created a little app which takes advantage of the MSN Messenger extensibility. So imagine that traveling salesman being on the road, and he's interested in finding some financial information with regards to our sales figures and so on. So he logs into MSN Messenger with his credentials. So right now the device is connected to the internet.
Right.
And within there, I'm going to start asking some of the questions, just like in Instant Messenger where you can say, you can IM people. I'm going to go to something called the AdventureWorks bot. The first thing I'm going to tell the bot is, hi. And if you notice, it says, hi, Michael. You can ask any kinds of questions that you want. Here are some of the examples. So the first thing I'm going to ask is, what are today's orders? And before I fire that up, just to show you that this is not smoke and mirrors, I'm going to show you actually what happens behind the scenes. So this is like a trace of commands that I'm entering on this Pocket PC device, and you can view those on the back end. So there was my hi, and now notice when I hit the next one, now the answer comes back and says, here's the order that I just entered, but here's the T-SQL query that got fired up against our enterprise server in order to extract this information. So I can go on and ask other questions, like what is the gross profit for bikes. And in this scenario, if you look at the bot, it will come back, and in this scenario, it's actually running an MDX query in order to get this. So the first one was a T-SQL, and the second one is actually an MDX query. There are other fun things here we can do is, for example, if I say help, you can say, it says, just ask Steve, he knows all the answers. So,
all right.
So this shows you some of the fun things you can do with the extensibility of this.
Thanks,
platform.
Michael. Appreciate it. So now we're working our way up the stack. We've got our data in from the Northwinds. We've actually surfaced it. We've set up high availability, and we've given folks access to it. Had a little fun using a bot on the front end of SQL through MSN Messenger, so you can start to see again the extensibility of the platform. The last thing we want to do now in this scenario is bring the information to life. We actually, because we sell through a lot of bike stores and we sell through a lot of stores, we have kiosks in those stores. Today they run a web-based application where you can search for information. I want to ask Paul to come out here and join me. What we want to do is take the opportunity while we're updating this to update those kiosks to a richer app. Come on, Paul. We can take advantage of Windows Presentation Foundation and the machines that are there to take advantage of the hardware. So instead of just running a web app, I'd like you to build me a rich client app to take advantage and help us sell the information or sell the merchandise. So I'm going to give you the screen here.
All right, Steve. So I have been working with a designer on this kiosk for you, and unfortunately the designer, she's sick today, but she told me that she'd finished getting through all of it, so I had to have a look at it myself, and I have been reviewing it, and I found a couple of things that need updated, so I'll just go and update those things and we'll get going. Okay, so first off, this is our kiosk screen, and these three white panels are going to have videos overlaid on them when the customers walk in and see them, and we're going to use that to attract the customer's attention. And over on the left here, we've got this browse products, and on the right, we've got the shopping cart. These are going to be fly-ins for different parts of the user interface. Now, how they fly in is we use these animations down here on this timeline. So one of these animations, this one's called category fly-in. If I play that, you can see the categories just move over there. And it uses this timeline that I can move back and forward. Now, I notice one of the things that isn't finished is this browse products needs to be a hotspot so that when you hover over it actually flies that in. So I'll show you what's needed in order to go and set that up. In this little tree here, we can see the UI elements, and if I double click on this category canvas, you notice the yellow line. That means that I'm adding a UI element, if I add one, inside of that container. I'll go and add a rectangle in here, and I'm going to use this rectangle as my hotspot. In order to do that, I need to make it invisible so that it doesn't actually show up, so I'll make it transparent in the appearance over here. And now I've got my hotspot. All I need to do is add it into the timeline. So we'll go into the timeline properties and add that trigger. So what this means is that all of this can be done by the designer and no code is required in order to do that fly-in. Okay, so we fixed that up. The other area where we were missing was in the product details. So the product detail doesn't actually show on the screen normally in the app unless you're actually viewing it. We have these little eyes here, and you'll notice it's not filled in on the product detail one. This allows me to just edit a particular part of the application. If I go and click on this, we see the product detail, and here you can see various details about it, and the Add to Cart button still needs lined up. So if I select that Add to Cart, I can go in and add the hookup to the animation. This is the animation here, so I can do that just the same. And I'm going to put that on the mouse click this time. Also on that same button, I need to actually add the item to the shopping cart. So I'll go ahead and set an event on that, on the click event, so that we've got these two actions happening on the click event. And this one, we need some code to happen so that we can add it to the shopping cart. So this has added the stub to the code, but we're in the designer tool, so I'm really finished now that we've gone to code. So I'll go and save that. And Visual Studio 2005 shares the same project files with Microsoft Expression Interactive Designer. So I can switch over to Visual Studio, and you can see the new method that's been added here for me to add that to the shopping cart. I have the code here on my toolbox, so I can go in and add that in. And you can see it's just doing an add onto shopping cart with that new item. And that's all we need. Now I can go ahead and build the solution. And once that's built, we actually use one-click deployment for this so that we can make sure that the right version is always there in the kiosk.
So the designer did all the work, saved it, and then you as a developer came in working in Visual Studio, had the same code, just looking at it from the code view. So again, it's that sharing of the same code, but with two different views to it, one from a design surface and one from a development surface. That builds that bridge between the designer and the developer we've been after.
Right, and we can work a lot more closely together. So here's the final app. I click on it here to launch it, and it does its one-click install, checking the version.
So now it'll install in all the kiosks without me having to go out there. It's not a change to the web browser. It's just now adding the application the way I want to.
Right, and you can see my cool videos rotating there, grabbing the user's attention, and I can fly out my browse products, select the products that I want to buy. I've got a few bikes here. I'm going to choose this one here. We see the details flying in. This was the hidden pane, remember? I can see the details, and I can rotate the bike because, of course, that's represented in XAML as well. I can zoom in and out too. And then we can go and check out that shopping cart functionality that we did actually add the bike to the cart.
And so if you'd done that as a mouse over versus a click every time somebody moved over, we could make them buy something?
Gee, that's a great idea, Steve. Maybe we should implement that.
I'm going to have to work with you on how we do some of this coding.
All right, so there we go. Our order's confirmed. So thank you very much.
Much appreciated. Thank you, Paul. So I want to thank my development team. They did a lot of work here. Let me go back over the slides. We've taken through a lot of information, but one of the things we wanted to do here was talk about the app platform all up, right? How do we start with a project? We just acquired another company. We need to do some integration on the application side. Start with the architecture to look at how it's going to work in the data center, build the data model, right? Do the order integration and order fulfillment process. We have business processes and orchestration that we need to hook together. We then need to actually import the data. We need to make that data available either to the business users or in this case the sales force. We can do some programming there, and then ultimately make the app available and bring the products to life. So you can pick 100 different scenarios. We took pieces of one, and we've shown you pieces of a lot of different products. But it's how these products work together that becomes part of the key for what we're doing. We build an overall app platform. You saw Windows Server underlying this, but SQL Server, BizTalk Server, SharePoint Server. Right? They build core capabilities. Whether it's a packaged app or something you build yourself, an app on top of that, and then Office, mobile capabilities, Windows, Visual Studio, the Expression products, right? We can do lots of features and functionality, but it's how these things work together when you're trying to solve a business problem. In this case, we just acquired another company, we need to integrate it and sell the products. That helps you better connect with the business. So, overall, because we're out of time, I just want to say, we spend time on making sure the systems are connected and adaptable, align with the IT overall, and provide better business choice. So you can go look into database development administration, BI, connected systems, and the development environment. Hopefully this provides you a bridge between Rob's view for advancing the business through IT and a set of capabilities that we're working on to enable you to do that on your own and with your teams in a better way. And hopefully some of the code is giving you a preview of all the different pieces that are available. So with that, I thank you for your time. We're about 5 minutes over, so I apologize, but thank you. Thanks for the team as well.